Yo, what's poppin', everyone? This is your boy DezDaKing, and we're back yet again with another episode of the King Talk TV podcast. Today, I have a special Chad, the Dad Myers, is going to come on. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. Think he said he has a degree in physics or something like that, but just a all-around smart, intelligent guy. Really, really intelligent. And today we're going to talk about, of course, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and basically Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and how it applies to politics, how it applies to philosophy, and just how it applies to his life. So I think this is a great conversation. And without further ado, I'm going to bring him on. In one moment, I'm going to bring him on. If you're watching this on Instagram, please give me shout out your name below in the comments so I can give you a shout out. If you're watching this on YouTube, consider giving me a like and subscribing, and leave a comment below of what you think about this interview today. And shout out to Fast Fit Foods. If you need a pre-made meal, go to your local fast fit food market. I have a discount code below in the show notes. Great pre-made meals, the best pre-made meals, I would say. If you don't have time to make your own meals, definitely hit up Fast Fit Foods for that. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Chad on, and we're going to get this show on the road. Hey, what's up, man? Can you hear me? Yeah, I can hear you.
Are you able to
Can you hear me? Can you hear me well?
Okay.
Awesome, man. Awesome. How you doing today, bro?
Yeah.
Man,
Good,
shoot,
man. How
I'm
are
not
you
gonna lie
feeling?
to you, bro. I got a little headache.
Yeah, dude. I can't believe you're up.
Yeah, man. It was
Good.
tough though. I'm not gonna lie to you, man. I usually get up around I usually get up earlier, like around 8 or 7, but that wasn't happening today. today. But yeah, man, I appreciate you jumping on today, and I don't want to hold you long, but I do want to have a meaningful conversation today, of course, and about jiu-jitsu and philosophy, politics. So without further ado, man, I'm just going to get ahead and get this started, bro. The first question I wanted to ask you, man, can you tell us a little bit about your background, your personal background, and how it has shaped your Brazilian jiu-jitsu journey?
So, I grew up playing a bunch of different sports competitively. I was actually like on a traveling baseball team for most of my youth. Like, yeah, I played on a bunch of basketball leagues, and I just played a bunch of different sports. And I realized that I wasn't getting taller. I'm a pretty short person. So like, a couple coaches and like my dad was like, if you want to start investing in something, you should probably invest in something that is like, if you're going to invest a bunch in basketball, but you're never going to be above 5'6", like maybe that's a bad investment, and my dad was a state champion wrestler when he was in high school. And so he's like, you should get into wrestling, and it's like good to defend yourself, things like that. So I got into wrestling finally around like 7th grade, and I lost every single match, I think.
Wow.
Every single one. I was horrible. I was the worst. And then my dad convinced me to stick with it in 8th grade. And then for whatever reason in 8th grade, I went undefeated in 8th grade. I didn't lose a match. And I caught the itch for grappling. Like I started to understand. And I stuck with wrestling all the way until my first year of college. And then I got into MMA, and when I found jiu-jitsu through MMA, which was a weird story too, because there's this guy who was on my high school wrestling team who I could literally use him to mop the mats, and he couldn't do anything to stop me. He was convincing me to come to the jiu-jitsu class, and so I was like, all right, I'll come to jiu-jitsu. And this little asshole, sorry about my language, this guy tapped me like 6 or 7 times in a 5-minute period, and I was livid because I thought I was a better grappler than him. So I joined the jiu-jitsu classes, and that was when I was about 22 or 23, or maybe 24. I don't know, somewhere around there in my MMA career. And then I've just been doing jiu-jitsu.
Nice, man. it's something how Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu can just humble you because you came in as an
Oh yeah.
experienced grappler. I mean, you wasn't Jiu-Jitsu grappling, but you were a grappler. You know what I mean? And how just a few techniques can make you feel like you don't know anything, man. So my next question was, how did you become interested in it? So I guess you already answered that, but what really got you, I guess, is there anything else that you add that made you, because you're a brown belt now, would you consider yourself a
Yeah.
professional at the sport, at the brown belt level?
I would say yes, because I own a school. I travel and I compete and I get paid to compete in some situations. So, I mean, jujitsu provides for me and my family right now. So I would say
Okay,
yes.
okay. Just a random question just thought of. So are you only a professional at jiu-jitsu if you're getting paid to do it? Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
okay, okay, okay.
probably.
So I heard from other guys that purple belts are basically like real, real practitioners of the sport itself. Like once you get the purple belt, like okay, like you are at a different level. Do you see it? Do you see it the same
Yeah.
way?
Yeah, like I would say once you're a seasoned purple belt, you are an expert at jujitsu, right? And so, yeah, you've hit that expert level where anybody who walks in the gym, regardless of size, weight, experience, who, as long as they don't have Brazilian jiu-jitsu experience, the purple belt's going to win, right? Like I wouldn't give out a purple belt unless I was confident that they can manhandle or woman handle. I don't know the term anymore, but they could handle anybody who walked in the door who didn't have
Nice,
jiu-jitsu
nice.
experience. You know what I mean? Like there could be like a D1 wrestler who walks in the gym, you know what I mean, and handle the white belts and the blue belts, but I'm going to give you a purple belt if you can handle that wrestler who doesn't have experience with jiu-jitsu. Right? So like you've reached that level. And everything beyond purple belt is like the top, I would say 10% of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Like the gains that you're making from purple belt to black belt is very minuscule. Like purple belts hang with black belts a lot in a lot of cases. And so you the I would say, like the gains you're making, the advancements, there's where I'm looking for. The advancements that you're making at that level are very, very short and very long. Like the distance
Yeah,
between them are very
yeah.
long. Am I making sense? Yeah, and so I think that's why people, like, you're an expert at that level because you're committed, because you learn a ton at white belt. You know what I mean? You make a lot of gains, you make a lot of advancements, you can feel the progression, but at purple belt, it's like it feels like it starts to get longer and more difficult to make each progression because you know what I mean? Now you're trying these things on purple belts, you're trying these things on brown belts and black belts, and it feels like you're just getting stuffed. And um, I would for me, it takes an expert to push past that and to figure out how to get past
So
that.
another question: what are, in your opinion, the little differences that would separate a purple belt from a brown belt to a black belt? Like what are those differences there? Just
Matt, like, no, Matt Time, brown belt has been a very, very interesting, belt for me. I think I had most of my growth at purple belt for sure, but brown belt I think is where I had all my success. And so I finally understood like the tiny little things that make the percentage of the move to be successful go up, right? Like this little adjustment here made that like a 50% success rate to an 80% success rate. You know what I mean? Where the black belt found all these tiny little creative ways to escape that, you know how to mitigate that. You know what I mean? The purple belt has all the techniques, they have everything, that they have all the tools in their belt, but there's like tiny little things, like tiny little adjustments that they
that
haven't accounted for yet.
that the tiny adjustments that by the time you reach brown belt, you figure out those little things that take it there. That's really interesting. Doesn't that kind of apply to like every belt in a way? Like there's
No, like it's broad strokes. Like white belt and blue belt, it's very broad strokes. Like here's the way I look at it. There's two different analogies when it comes to lower belts and higher belts. The first analogy I say is like white belts, like grade school, right? 2 + 2 = 4. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. And what I mean by that is you're going to be doing 2 + 2 = 4 all the way until you're a professor. You know what I mean? It's a universal thing that you have to use, but you use it all over the place. And then when you get to blue belt, you're like in high school. Like it's a little bit more sophisticated. There's a little bit more expertise in the things that you're learning. And then you start saying crap like, well, this will never work in real life, or I'll never use this math in the real world. You know what I mean? But if you decide to continue with it, I would say that purple belt is college, right? You're starting to learn about yourself. You're starting to make it yours. When you graduate college, you pretty much have all the tools in your belt to go off and be a professional, right? The learning almost ends at grad or at your undergrad, right? But once you get to brown belt, I would say that's grad school, where you're taking all the things you've learned and making it your own. You're creating your own thesis, right? You're creating your own game to be like, I'm presenting new material and new thought for the world and presenting it to the world. And then black belt is like a professor, exactly how you would equate it to like a PhD or a professor, where it's like your job now is to do research and provide it and teach to all the other people your knowledge that you've taken on, right? So that's the way I would look at it. And so when you're a purple belt, right, you're just still taking in that information, but still becoming, you're reaching the pinnacle of information taken, and you can kind of regurgitate that information and be successful. And you can go out in the professional working world and be a satisfactory, member of society. Where when you get to grad school, right, they're expecting you to come up, like in brown belt, they're expecting you like, okay, tell us what you know, come up with something new. You have a good enough understanding of this. Like, I want to find out how you view jujitsu. Is there a technique here that's different than anybody else's technique, And I kind of like that analogy because I think it's spot on with my experience as a purple belt to brown belt, or like a lower belt to brown belt, right? But the second analogy I would say is like it's like building a sculpture, right? When you get that blank block of marble and you're a white belt, it's a lot of broad, giant hacks, right? You're just hacking away, to start getting there. But like, imagine once you get to like the facial expressions, when you're like building a marble statue, like how intricate each tiny little polish and tiny little adjustments, right, to make somebody's facial expression. And if you do one tiny thing wrong, you've ruined, because you can't put marble back on the statue. So you've completely ruined the statue, right? And that you start realizing the mistakes, these tiny little mistakes, are the mistakes are catastrophic in jiu-jitsu, right? You do one tiny thing wrong, and that's the thing that's going to get you caught, or that's the thing that's going to allow your opponent to escape, right? Those tiny little things. So white and blue belt, you get away with those big hacks. You know what I mean? You're hacking away at the marble. But once you start to get to purple, brown, and black, that's when you could totally mess up the statue.
Wonderful, man. I like that. I really like that.
So,
I have another question for you. It's kind of in regards to we're talking about belts and everything, but I seen that there are purple belts who get tapped by blue belts. There are even some really, really good, I guess you could say, white belts who have, wrestling background, who can get the upper hand on some blue belts, maybe even some purple belts on rare occasions, and even some black belts can sometimes take the L to, I guess, a brown belt. So, my question is, do belt ranks really matter? Like, are they absolutely necessary in jiu-jitsu, or can we get away without having the belt rank system?
I will say I have two answers to that. Yes, I think that they're necessary. You know what I mean? And one of the main reasons is in wrestling, most people get involved in wrestling at a younger age. You have very, very, very few people who get involved in wrestling as an adult, right? And so then it's like you can measure yourself like I'm a middle school wrestler, I'm a high school wrestler, you know, like I'm a senior wrestler, I'm a college wrestler, you know? And so you're already at that level, you know, you're going with people who have this many years of experience. And we don't have that when we're an adult. You know what I mean? You could be a 35-year-old mechanic who is getting involved in jiu-jitsu for the first time. And so when you have a journey, as long as a Brazilian jiu-jitsu journey to black belt, I think the measurement of your success is important, right? Because you want to be competitive in the sport as well. So if I want to go and it's like, okay, I'm going to go to this competition, I weigh 145 pounds, and I'm going to go against everybody else who weighs 145 pounds. And I started, you know, a few months ago because I want to be competitive. I like to compete. I might be going against, you know, a 12-year veteran who's competing and just get completely slaughtered. And though, I mean, you're going to have like a learning experience doing that, I don't think it's the best way to get that learning experience. If you put a bunch of people who have around the same amount of mat time, around the same skill level and things like that, and then they go to compete against each other, I think you're going to have a lot more people stay with the sport, right? And they're going to get that competition time and their progression, their measurable and observable progression for them is going to add to the longevity of their jiu-jitsu. So I think having different levels, the sense of accomplishment, and a universal way to show like the jiu-jitsu community, like this is what I've done thus far, this is what you should expect from me, right? And it's just like in the military. When I see a sergeant, I have a certain level of expectation. When I see a private, I have very little amount of expectation. That's okay. Like that's where you're going to make mistakes and things like that. And I can yell at you, you know, as a private and correct you because I want you to stick with it for the long run. If somebody goes in the military with the expectation of being a general, you know what I mean? Like you're going to have a bad time and that private's going to be overwhelmed and not going to be able to provide that expectation. So now when I say when you get promoted to blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, black belt, don't take wins and losses as a representation of your belt. Right? Everybody gets caught in jiu-jitsu. It's a chess game, right? Some people take to chess much better than other people. Some people have been doing chess for, you know, decades, and, you know, some new kid who's just like autistic in the way of chess can beat the shit out of them. And so that doesn't take away from the master level of the chess player. Does that make sense?
Even though our egos are really, really damaged, we get tapped out by a lower ranking belt.
Right.
But shouldn't let that bother us.
We accept that. Yeah, we accept that at like higher belts. So like purple belt, when I'm going against a purple belt, I need to be cognizant that that person has the talent to tap me. You know what I mean? And brown belt, what they tell me is just a black belt who's trying to prove himself or herself, right? So we're all dangling at that level. You know what I mean? And when I'm like flow rolling or I'm not feeling good, you know what I mean? I put myself in bad situations all the time. I get tapped by lower belts when, you know what I mean, when I'm playing my game. That being said, like if I'm playing my competition game, likely, you know, the likelihood goes down. But I mean, I get tapped left and right, you know what I mean? Because I'm trying to learn things. If you're always playing, especially in the wrestling room or in the jiu-jitsu room, if you're always playing to win, you're not playing to learn. And that's a very, very important lesson. So I have a very, I mean, you've rolled with me a bunch. I have a very unique style, I would say, and it makes me vulnerable a lot of the time. But I put myself in those situations because I'm trying as best I can to feel the jiu-jitsu, not trying to win. If my goal, I tell this to Chris. I don't know Chris's last name.
Yeah.
The guy who came over
yeah. Shout
from
out to
DC
Chris. I don't know
Fighters,
his
Chris.
last name, but yeah, shout out to Chris. Chris know who Chris is.
I tell him all the time, I'm like, you're going too fast. You're trying to win. You're worried about losing position. You're worried about losing. Like, don't be playing to win. You know, be worried about learning. If you take each role with, I'm going to learn from each position I put myself in, I'm going to feel this, I'm going to make my body adapt to this, I think your jiu-jitsu career will skyrocket. And I think the reason I'm so adamant about that is because for my first couple years in jiu-jitsu, I basically had like privates with black belts, like incidentally, for my classes. And there was no winning for me. You know, like I just got the shit kicked out of me, you know what I mean? And they were happy because I was a grappler and I had wrestling experience. So I was one of the only people who came to this morning class, and I would roll with this black belt named Ace Redleaf. And he would just beat the shit out of me left and right. And, you know, so I had to accept, like, I'm not rolling to win here. I'm rolling to learn. And my game, I felt like when I started going to like the evening classes and stuff, I felt how much I was progressing because I was feeling when, you know, my body was feeling for those vulnerabilities, for those opportunities and things like that. So I try to push that onto my students. Like, don't worry about the win. Like when you're in the wrestling room, don't worry about the win. And so that's a long-winded way to say that when I'm rolling in the jiu-jitsu room, I'll have blue belts, you know what I mean, put me in some like very vulnerable positions, or sometimes even get the tap on me because I'm trying something new, or I'm experimenting, I'm trying to flow roll, and trying to get the flow roll or experiment against a strong blue belt who is coming after you, like you know what I mean, like they can't hurt you, you know, it's like you're blue belt. Sometimes when you go with black belts, you feel like you can't hurt them, like you're just going as hard as you can, you know. And so to be able to experiment and do things on those belts is a very good thing. However, every once in a while, when you're experimenting, you make that mistake, that blue belt's going to catch you and rip your arm off. So, you know what I mean? Like, I don't take a loss in jiu-jitsu ever as an ego hit anymore. Because I'll learn right then and there, okay, that technique doesn't work, or there's a huge hole in that technique. I'm all right with that, you know? And I won't do that in competition now. I'm like busting out those taps in the wrestling room so I don't get those taps in the competition. Like getting a tap in or getting tapped in a competition with a move you know how to avoid is one of the worst feelings ever. So I very much take to that in the wrestling room. So if a blue belt's tapping a brown belt, if a purple belt's tapping a black belt, so on and so forth, like don't worry about your belt color in terms of that. You know what I mean? You want to get those taps out of the way. I think did I tell you that? Let's say your journey to black belt is 10,000 taps. Oh shit, I got tapped 5 times today. Cool, that's 5 less times in my journey. So
No, man, that was
was a long
perfect,
answer.
man. I love it. Actually, I really love it. And real quick though, I did want to ask you this: do you believe that's the best way to get better at jiu-jitsu, is to make yourself vulnerable like that? And okay,
Oh yeah, put yourself in situations you've never been put in before. What you want to do, the whole end goal of this is you never want to be put into a situation that you've never seen before. That's when you get tapped, right? That's when you get put into a situation. Okay, here's another long-winded answer. The whole point of a martial art, right, is to stay calm in the face of war, right? When someone's presenting you with violence or combat, you want to be the one that's calm. You want to be the one that's logistic, thought out, measured. And so when you go to a state of fight or flight, you completely negate your frontal cortex, you know, and you go to the animalistic part of your brain, and all that technique that you've learned and stuff goes away, right? And that's what you want to avoid as much when you're in conflict. You want to stay calm. You don't want to make bad decisions. When we see cops in those scenarios, in those confrontations, that's when you see bad decisions being made. I forgot that one cop case where that girl that lady, she pulled out her firearm instead of a taser. You know what I mean? She said, taser, 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 and then shot a guy with a gun. You know what I mean? That's what you want to avoid. You want to stay calm. You want to be, be making good decisions. She made a bad decision because she was in fight or flight. So when you do jujitsu for the first time, when you're the white belt, you become a spazzy white belt because you are being forced into physical scenarios that are terrifying. You know what I mean? And your body only has one answer. It's to freak out until you're out of there. But once you start having answers for that, you notice how calm you stay. You get mounted and you're like, okay, I know where I'm safe. I know where I'm vulnerable. You know what I mean? And you start responding in an appropriate way, a measured, calculated way, and you stay calm because you have a way out. You have the exit sign. You know what I mean? You have a plan. And so you follow the plan. You know what I mean? You're always pushing for the plan and you're not freaking out. So when you get put into new scenarios you've never felt before, that's when your body will go into that fight or flight. And so what you want to do is you want to get into as many weird scenarios as you possibly can, because when it accidentally happens or someone forces you there, you want to have an answer. You always want an answer for where you're at, right? A defense, a counter, an offense, you know what I mean? A way to stuff it. So putting yourself in all these weird scenarios, for me, it might not sound like it's practically applicable in that moment, but I can guarantee that there's going to be a situation where there's some weird scramble and you're going to end up there and you're like, oh, I know what to do from here, you know? And when the electron, I know this is a weird jump, but when the electron was discovered by Thompson, JJ Thompson, I can't remember his name, but when he won the Nobel Peace Prize, he's like, may this be of use to nobody. You know what I mean? I discovered something that nobody can really see, and it's not going to be of use to anything. And then what ends up happening is, less than a century later, our entire grid is run on moving electrons through a wire. When we discovered discrete mathematics and we discovered prime numbers and stuff, people are like asking, why are you learning about all these prime numbers? And like, well, it's unique and it's cool. Mathematicians didn't really have a good answer. Now we run like our computer systems on discrete mathematics and prime numbers, and all of our strongest security systems run on these algorithms based off prime numbers and things like that. So you see all these people doing these weird Imanari rolls and ninja rolls and things like that. That I was like, I would never use that in the street fight. That would never work in the UFC. Then all of a sudden you see like Ryan Hall do an Imanari roll and tap, BJ Penn, who's supposed to be like the ultimate grappler, with a heel hook. So it's like, oh shit, now maybe it does have practical application. And it's the allowing yourself to experiment in these situations. BJ Penn probably never thought he was going to get Imanari rolled or in a UFC fight. You know what I mean? But turns out someone figured it out. And if you're the person who's saying, oh, that's not going to work in real life, you know what I mean? You might get left behind. And when we do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in spats and spandex and kimonos and stuff on soft mats, that's when we're advancing the martial art that is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? There's self-defense Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There is a martial art Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I would say there's competition Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And each one of those dictates the style and brand of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that you're taking part in. So there's a lot of things I would never do in a self-defense situation when I'm doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Does that make sense? But when you're in the wrestling room, man, you better put yourself in all those weird scenarios, right? It's all about perfecting the art. It's all about sculpting, right? Can I get a submission from this inverted upside down thing on my head, blah, blah, blah. And, that experimentation phase, that putting yourself there is what advances your competition jiu-jitsu. That advances your martial art jiu-jitsu, because what's happening is you're making yourself calm, knowledgeable, and versatile in every single position that you can possibly imagine. Does that?
Well, that was
okay,
great,
that was
man.
another long-winded answer, right?
That was great.
Okay.
What has been your biggest challenge so far in your career?
Business. my falling out with my business partner got really, really ugly. Um, I got accused of things that we when I got into the business of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, things got really ugly. And that I hated finding that out. And that was heartbreaking because it's like, I'm a brown belt. I have a friend who's a black belt, and we're going to open up a school together, like that's the dream, right? Like I've made it to this point. I put in 8 years plus of jujitsu. I have a lifetime of grappling. I have MMA experience and, you know, a ton of competition experience. And it's like, okay, I think I'm worth something of value. So I'm going to open up my own school, right? It's finally time. I'm going to do it. And then the politics of jiu-jitsu hits really hard. The shade you get from other school owners, and then when things don't work out with your business partner, how ugly things got, and like false accusations being thrown my way, and like your students judging you, and especially when they don't know the entire truth. One of the biggest things is like I didn't take to social media to defend myself or talk about the breakup really in depth, and they used their platform to really throw accusations that some were just objectively like absolutely not true, like just flat out lies from leaders in the community, not only leaders in the jiu-jitsu community but leaders in the community, like people who hold like very, very high status as a community member, just throwing horrible accusations that were like I got one of the accusations, for example, was like that I've been kicked out of 3 jiu-jitsu schools, which was like, no, not even close. Like, what? You know what I mean? So like he threw that out there, and as someone who's such a large community member in the school, it's like, why would anybody question him? I'm like, he didn't provide any evidence that that's the case that happened. You know what I mean? And I don't even know where he's getting that number from. He's, you know what I mean? I like, what the heck? So that kind of like broke my heart. And a lot of my students, like they came to me and like, what's going on? And I had evidence of everything that happened. So the people who reached out to me, I showed them the evidence that it was just complete and utter BS. But, some people like canceled their membership, and people from the, jiu-jitsu community, like at other schools, said some stuff, and I got like people hitting me up online, and that was really ugly. And what sucked is like 99% of it wasn't true. And so I have all these people who formed opinions about me based off a lie or based off like manipulated truth or something. And it was one of the ugliest and worst times of my life, is opening up a school and not getting along with my business partner. And at the same time, getting shade for, and getting negative emotions and push from other people who own schools. You know what I mean? And I don't know, that sent me to a dark place. And I wanted to give up. You know what I mean? And people wanted me to fail. Like that person, their entire goal is for me to fail and tarnish my reputation. So that was my biggest challenge for sure. Like I wanted to quit jiu-jitsu. And it wasn't even the jiu-jitsu aspect. It was just deciding one day I want to own a school, which is the dream. But it gets really, really ugly when you decide to open up a school, and jiu-jitsu goes from being the jiu-jitsu that you want to being political.
What's one thing that you learned from that situation that you won't do again in the future?
There's a lot of things I should say that I don't want to inflame the situation again, right? If you're going to open a school, I would say very, very, very much, if you possibly can, don't go don't go into business with anybody else in the martial arts world, right? Try to do it on your own, right? And I would also say that there's a lot of communities out there that don't have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that would love to have you there. If you're a purple belt, right? If you're a purple belt and you're a seasoned purple belt, I would say like you have the capability of opening up your own school. And the jiu-jitsu community is very, very much, I won't say like power hungry, but they want to control as much as they can what Brazilian jiu-jitsu is. Like, for example, if I start a basketball league, if I coach good basketball, people will come. If I don't coach good basketball, people won't come. You know what I mean? There's not like other basketball leagues that are going to be like throwing shade at me. You know what I mean? It's like basketball is basketball. If I can coach, I can. If I can't, I can't. And in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, it's not that way. I could be a world champion, and then if I open up my own school, people are like, well, who's his black belt? How long this? Blah, 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 blah. What's his credibility there? You know, and it turns into a very controlled scenario. Like, why does he have the ability to open a school as compared to us who are over here in what I would say to people who their dream is to open a school is that there's communities out there who need jiu-jitsu and who would love to have jiu-jitsu. And as a purple belt, you have more than enough knowledge to start bringing Brazilian jiu-jitsu to people. And I think it's pretty disgusting for you to say that if that purple belt has the means to do it, to tell them no and prevent an entire community from having Brazilian jiu-jitsu in their area because you think that they need to have these specific qualifications when they could be getting access to jiu-jitsu from that purple belt. And I've heard of blue belts who opened up schools and ran it successfully. You know what I mean? When I opened up my school, my goal was I went all the way out to Peyton, Colorado. You know what I mean? Where no other school was, you know, miles away from the nearest school. And they didn't have jiu-jitsu, and they were willing to come to jiu-jitsu in Peyton, but not drive all the way to Colorado Springs to do it. And that was like the niche of my market, was like I was going someplace where nobody had it, and I wanted to coach it. And I still got flack from the jiu-jitsu community. You know what I mean? And you know what? You know what's even freaking crazy about that is even with the flack, even with people trying to shut me down, my school still, with all of our students, have gone to competitions and brought home team medals. You know what I mean? They're going to these competitions and winning. They don't win like every match. You know, we're brand new. We're a brand new school. But still, with how new we are, we were going against gray belts and more advanced belts, heavier people, older kids, and they were still winning. You know, it's like I'm not teaching them BS, and I think the proof is in the pudding. They consistently bring home team medals against other schools with victories. And I'm very, very proud of that. And still, the fact that I was the #1 ranked brown belt in IBJJF for gi and no-gi at 2 separate times. I took pans for no-gi Brazilian, like at brown belt for IBJJF. And my kids are bringing home these medals, and I have my students who are going out and competing and winning. They still are trying to throw down on my credibility, on my ability to open a school. And your ability to coach and your ability to be a leader is not combined with your ability to be a practitioner. Does that make sense? So like you could be a black belt who, you know, I mean, you're not the most talented black belt in the world, but if you're a good coach and you're a good role model and you can relay the moves very well to your students, that makes you a valuable coach, you know? So that's another, sorry, I like get carried away with this, but if my suggestion is if you're going to open a school, like do it. This is, you know, capitalist free United States. Go out there and open up a school and don't hear about the haters. But they're trying to control the market, right? And if it's your dream to open up a school, then open up a school. Jiu-jitsu is getting more and more popular every single day. You know, and you have these huge people out there, huge people like Jocko Willink and Joe Rogan who are telling everybody, Like, I don't care how old you are, go do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. People are getting their kids involved in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You know, as the population increases, as markets increase and stuff like that, there is room for you to open up a school. And you'll find out if there isn't, because you open up and people won't come. But if you open up a school and people come because there's no jiu-jitsu out there, like that, you can start living your dream, dude. So that my biggest challenge was getting into the business side of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Things got very, very ugly. And it broke me down. And it was thank goodness for my students who built me back up to keep my school. And meeting DC fighters was one of the best things that happened to me too. And someone who's willing to stick by me and stick up for me when a lot of people abandoned me. So
nice, man. Thank you for sharing all that, bro. And it sucks that when business and when money in general is involved, people just change, man. And that's just the nature of some people. And you know, but I'm not glad that all that happened to you, but I'm glad that all that led up to this here, me meeting you and us combining gyms. And I love you, man. And I love the atmosphere at your place, man, and just being to meet these different people, man. It's awesome how things work out at the end. You know, even though you have to go through some crap, but things usually work out. And I'm glad it worked out for you. And we're still improving, man. We're still getting better. Minus all the negative people in the business part of jiu-jitsu, do you have any positive role models that you look up to that influence your jiu-jitsu game?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I should say this after I just said that whole thing. Jiu-jitsu's been one of the most positive experiences of my life. You know, when I was in a very, very bad mental and physical state, when I was very, very sick, and I had a lot of mental health issues, you know, things that happened like with the military and things that happened, you know, in my personal life. Like jiu-jitsu was my heartbeat. You know what I mean? When I felt like I couldn't go on any longer, like just showing up to jiu-jitsu and, you know, getting that push in was the thing that I think kept me going during that time. So very, very positive experience with jiu-jitsu, very, very positive experience with almost everybody I've met in jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? What jiu-jitsu has done for me and what I know I can do for everybody out there is incredible. So, yeah, don't take all that stuff I just said to take I have a negative experience of jiu-jitsu. So to answer your question, when I first got into Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you're talking about, I was the small guy. You know, I was very, very small. A lot of people were beating up on me. My favorite grapplers were Marcelo Garcia and Jeff Glover. And it's because they were small guys who could handle themselves. You know what I mean? Marcelo being arguably the best of all time, the greatest of all time, utilizing his little body against, you know, giants effectively. Man, I was like, I can do that. You know what I mean? And Jeff Glover turning himself into freaking Gumby and being able to get to a good situation at any time. And their ability to just like really take on the essence of a martial art. And then, so I looked at their game a lot. I adapted my game around them a lot. And then this is going to be a weird answer, but my ex-business partner, where things got really ugly, I actually have him to thank for getting me so heavily involved in the competition world of jiu-jitsu. And that kind of made me the grappler I am today, is committing to being as competitive as I am was a push that he did, right? So, you know, even though things are very ugly between him and I right now, I, you know, give credit where credit is due. And he's the one who got me going to all these competitions, like every single weekend, flying. We would like do things like, and this happened multiple times, where we would catch a midnight flight to Atlanta or something, compete, and catch like a 10 o'clock flight home and then drive home. So we just flew out that morning and competed and flew back just to get a competition and not have to pay for a hotel room and things like that. And those were some insane experiences. Being able to compete like that it's an insane experience. And then Christian Woodmansey, I really, really like. He's somebody who, even though he's got like world championships under his belt, he's one of those people who genuinely cares about being a coach and being a leader and progressing your game. And like as a gym owner, when this whole breakup happened, he saw like all the accusations and he was watching from a distance and he was like, hey man, I'm here to help. And I was even talking with him a little bit about like joining his affiliation, but then I met Mike. But Christian Woodmansey, he's the kind of guy where he's like, if I'm not busy, I'm going to help coach you when I see you, on the competition mat. He's like, he's there to coach other people, but he sees you and he's like, he's got time. He's like going to coach you. And all of a sudden you have Christian Woodmansey coaching in your corner and he reaches out, he messages you and he's like, hey, how are things going? I saw everything that's going on. If you want to talk about it, let me know. And he's the kind of leader I want to be. And, if I ever reach a level like he is, that's who I want to be in the jiu-jitsu community. And by the way, he's like 125 pounds. Christian, if you watch this, I'm really, really sorry if I misquote your weight. He's very particular about that. But he's a little guy, very, very talented, and utilizes mechanics so well being his size that, that's inspirational for somebody like me who's 145, and I continuously compete in the absolute divisions. So he's a very powerful member in the jiu-jitsu community. If you haven't heard of Christian Woodmansey, I would go follow him like right away.
I'm gonna check him out. I haven't heard of, but I'm gonna check him out. Follow. But just a few more questions for you, bro. And thank you for everything that you provided so far. How do you think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu can help a person understand and navigate the world around them?
Oh, dude, there's an infinite answer to that. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu trains you to go from that fight or flight where I feel like I'm physically dying to being calm, right? And so what happens is you start to navigate the stress response. Does that make sense? When you're learning to take on a physical threat and eliminate or mitigate that stress response, it's very, very easy. Very, very easy to start mitigating other stress responses. Because what you're doing is you're taking on skills. Most of the time we avoid stress responses, because they're uncomfortable. But when you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you can't avoid that stress response. So it forces you into that uncomfortable scenario and deal with it. When we have anxiety problems, when we have depression and things like that, we avoid the things that make us not feel that way rather than like staring into the abyss, right? And so forcing yourself into those scenarios and getting yourself out is a very important skill. And I remember when my wife, she was doing early childhood education. She was talking about risky play for kids. So it turns out that, and I don't remember if this article is still relevant, and you could fact check me on this, but I remember there being an article that she showed me that the most fatal injuries and serious injuries on playgrounds happen on the most padded playgrounds. The more padded the playground, the more serious injury and sometimes fatal injuries happen to kids. And it's because they think because everything's padded that they're safe, and they don't make good decisions, right? When they do that, and they end up falling and getting themselves hurt. Turns out when you are doing dangerous things carefully, as Jordan Peterson said, when you're doing risky play, what you're doing is you're putting yourself as a kid in stressful situations and forcing yourself out of it. You're high up on the monkey bars. It's like no one's going to come save you. Even though it's scary, you have to figure it out. And that stress response, going through that stress response is very, very important. If you look at the development of playgrounds over the years, you'll see how risky play went from very high to very low. And a lot of these adults don't mitigate stress very well. You know what I mean? I remember I grew up in a very old-fashioned town, and what was hilarious is the fence line that was the playground just went around a bunch of trees and boulders. So we were like legit just climbing and jumping from boulders and sharp rocks and trees and stuff for like part of our playground. You know what I mean? And I mean that would not fly these days, but so that's very important. And so as an adult, when you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or when you're a teenager and you're doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's like you're finally getting in that risky play. You know what I mean? Where somebody has the ability to kill you if they wanted or break your limb, and you're figuring out how to deal with that emotionally. The other thing I would say it helps with is being humble and getting broken down. Usually the dog that can fight the least is the one that barks the most, right? The men in the world who I think have the quote unquote toxic masculinity, or the men in the world who peacock and they're always willing to throw down, they're proving it to themselves and everybody, and they're compensating for something that they don't have, like a lack of manlyhood. When you get beat down enough in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like the last thing you really want to do is fight. And if like I would say black belts and brown belts and purple belts, their interest in getting in a physical altercation is probably the lowest out of all the practitioners out there. You know what I mean? There's no way I want to get in a physical altercation. I'll do everything I can to get out of the physical altercation. But at the same time, you know what it's like to get beat down. So you're never going to treat anybody that way, and I'm not going to say this as a generality. I'm speaking for most of the people out there. You start treating people with a certain humility. You start treating life with a certain approach, that you're not the toughest badass out there. There's a lot for you to learn. You know what I mean? When you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's a very measured hierarchy. I know that guy beats me every time. In this room, he's the alpha male. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? There's no arguing with it. There's no peacocking around it. There's no manipulating way around it. Go out on the GD mats and figure it out. Figure out who's the best. We all go out there and we figure out who's the best. And that ego check every single day is like, I know exactly where I sit. You know what I mean? I know exactly where I sit in this room because we fought it out. And your need to prove that outside of the jiu-jitsu gym goes down. Where do I sit? You know what I mean? As a socioeconomic status, where do I sit as like the toughest man in this room? Like, you don't care anymore. You really don't. And that's I think a very powerful lesson that you get by practicing a martial art that beats the crap out of you every single day. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu allows you to spar in a deadly manner every single day. You know what I mean? There's people who do Taekwondo and things like that. You can't spar 100% in Taekwondo every single day. You know what I mean? And you can be a black belt teenager in Taekwondo. You cannot be a black belt teenager in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You know what I mean? So it's battle tested and proven. So I think the type of humans that you produce when you get to purple, brown, and black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a person I would want to be around. You know what I mean? A person I think that has a positive influence on their community in everyday life, I would say. The people who have the discipline and the grit to make it past that blue belt level are people who usually have the discipline and grit in their work, in their home, you know what I mean? Being like good role models and wherever they're at. And then also the humility to know that you're not the toughest guy around there, and to laugh at, like, what would you say, Des, is one of like the biggest cultural jokes in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Off the top of my head is the blue belt. Blue belts always quitting when they get, and the
blue belts
don't warm up.
I would say those are very popular, but I would say
we all
suck.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's like one of the biggest things. It's like never how good you are. It's like I sucked in 2022 and I shook in 2023 and
Yeah.
still suck at jujitsu. You know what I mean? Like every meme is just like how much you suck, and that our entire culture is based off that humility. You know what I mean? That no one's good at Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and there's always learning, and that you're not this great thing. And even though you practice something that makes you probably better than 99% of the world out there, because having a very basic rudimentary level of grappling will make you more dangerous than anybody who hasn't practiced grappling out there. Even though you have that, you have the humility that you just get the crap beat out of you by there's other people out there walking around that can make you look like a child. You know what I mean? If they wanted to. And that understanding, that humility that you get every day is very important as a person. I think we used to look at the stars, you know, before light pollution, and we used to look up there and realize how infinitesimally small we are and how little of a role we play. You know what I mean? The universe, and you look at these other animals that could kill you, and diseases that could come by, and there's no medicine for diseases. There's no antibiotics back then. And for something in this world to come by and take you away, you just felt less significant. You were humbled constantly. You know, and people were dying left and right. Infant deaths and toddler deaths were fucking way too high. You know what I mean? I couldn't imagine living in a world where I had 7 kids and 3 of them survived. You know what I mean? And you're constantly being humbled, and we don't have a lot of that in today's society. We're in a climate controlled area. We're in this climate controlled box. We get into a climate controlled box on wheels to go to our climate controlled box to be a productive member of society. You know what I mean? We have more than enough food. We don't have to hunt for our food. It's just delivered to us. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even have to get off my couch to get 1,000 calories shoved into my face, and because somebody delivers it to us. There's so few things, you know, like how many people living today didn't get the hunt, they didn't get the catch, and then they were hungry for the next few days, and then they still had to hunt being hungry. That, you know, that's those things humble you. And there's very few things that humans deal with that humble them. When you get to go and get the crap beat out of you and be humbled, you have a little midget like me with a lisp, just like running circles around a giant wrestler, you know what I mean? That humbles you, you know what I mean? And then I have somebody like that's even smaller than me, like Christian Woodman, humbling me. You know what I mean? Like, there's always levels to this game. And then you start to realize, oh, the dude that beats the crap out of me has people beating the crap out of him. How high does this shit go? You know, like, it's terrifying. And you know what I mean? It's finally something that you can go and face, and there's no way out. You know, there's no rationale out. When you get tapped and you get physically manhandled, like, there's no argument about it. You have to face that. And there's very few things in this world that force you to face that. So I think that it's a very positive influence on people in the community to have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu around. And so to answer your question, again, with another very long answer, that would be another answer, say, like, it provides humility and it humbles people instantaneously, almost. And the people who stick with that have a constant understanding of where they sit. And it's not at the top. And a lot of people in their home, they're at the top. You know what I mean? In their car, they're at the top. You know what I mean? Like, when they have a shitty boss, they can talk smack about their shitty boss and this, that, and the other thing. But in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you can talk smack all you want, but you know where you stand. You know, like, and I think that's very good. I think that's very good for a person. I think that's very good for life.
I love all what you said, man, and it's so true. Like, it's so true. Like, when I first started this, I was a CrossFit gym guy. You know, bigger than I am now. I'm pretty big now, but I was bigger back then. And I started out going against, you know Addie, little Addie. I was not little as in being rude, but she was smaller than me, considerably smaller than me. Man, she would just beat me up, man, all the time, bro. And just this little, frail, 100-pound lady choking me out, man. Me being a grown man, I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't deal with it, and that truly, like, really humbled me. It made me like, wow, like, this woman here can kill me if she really, really wanted to, you know. And man, if that don't humble you, I don't know what will. You know what I mean? So
Right.
yeah, that's and all what you said, like how it applies just to life in general. Like you walk around, like man, there are people out there who are killers, man, are killers, and
Yeah.
you and they're unassuming. Like respectfully, you are unassuming, Chad. Just seeing you walking around, you're not going to think that this guy is a killer. You know what I mean? But you are. So
Yeah.
it it makes you, I guess, I don't know if you agree with this. It makes you respect people like more better than what you
Yeah.
usually would. You know, because you don't know what this guy knows.
Hmm.
You don't know what the guy knows or what he's
Yeah.
been through. You know what I mean? So
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people are hiding, and it's sometimes the nicest people who are hiding like the
yes,
deadliest skills.
yes, they're hiding. They're not even letting you see the full picture, man. So yeah, that's beautiful, man.
Right.
Bro, I had more questions, but I don't want to hold you for much longer. We have to do a part two, and and say what?
No, you're not holding me at all.
Okay, okay, okay,
You're not holding
okay,
me at
okay,
all.
okay.
Ask what you want.
I did want to ask you this though. We talked about the concept of flow in jiu-jitsu. Like
Heck yeah.
what is that to you? And is it just a jiu-jitsu thing? Is it a life thing? How do we apply flow not only to jiu-jitsu, but what is it in context of jiu-jitsu, and can it be used elsewhere in other areas in our lives?
Absolutely. Yeah. Flow state is something that the Taoists call it. People from Taoism, like ataraxia for the Stoics, nirvana, sometimes for the Buddhists. And then, for like people who aren't sports now, it's like finding the zone, getting in the zone. I mean, musicians, they get in the zone and things like that. And it's something that you find that brings you to the now, the present, right? Where you're no longer thinking, right? You're all of the crowdness, the chaos that's going on in your brain goes away, right? And you're only focusing on that thing right there, and you don't even realize you're in it until afterwards. You know what I mean? Like, oh dang, I was in the flow. So Taoism, if I'm correct, means the way, right? It's and within Taoism, um, they have different aspects and expressions of things that put you into a state of being at peace, like at peace, but like in most alignment with the universe, basically, most alignment with nature. There we go. And one of those things is finding your flow state. And in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, when you start doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and you're being challenged, there's only one thing you could be thinking about at that moment. You know what I mean? It's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And what's even crazier is once you've been doing it long enough, you don't even have to be thinking about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Your body's just moving with it. You know what I mean? Your body's moving with the other person. Your body's finding those arm bars. Your body's finding the back takes and finding opportunities. And you're not thinking about it. You're just doing it. Your body sees it and it does it. And we talked a little bit about this last night. It's kind of like that same feeling when you're driving your car. I know we all know what we're talking about. Don't make me feel crazy, but you're driving and then 5 minutes go by and you're like, oh man, like I don't remember the last 5 minutes of driving. I hope like I didn't break any traffic laws while I was doing it. And it's like, because your body has done it so many times, it knows what to do naturally. You know what I mean? And if a threat comes up, it knows how to respond. And besides that, it can kind of go in like this autopilot mode. And they think that animals, that's like the state that animals constantly live in, is because animals don't have the capability of the temporal periphery, meaning like they can't like rest on the past and they can't rest on the future. Does that make sense? Like their mental focus can only focus on the present. Like it's a very, very limited time frame that they're consciously can be looking at, you know? They know that if I grab a leash, that and a walk is in their future, basically. But they can't figure out that a year and a half from now there's going to be like a solar eclipse. You know what I mean, or whatever. And they can't dwell on the past the same way that we dwell on the past. We can go revisit the past and have it cause and trigger an emotional response. You know, they can't go involuntarily do that we're aware of, right? And so when you get into a flow state, you're in that scenario where you are forced to be focused on the present, and all the thoughts in your mind go away and you're just existing. You're being as natural as your body can be, meaning that you are flowing with nature as naturally as you are designed to be, as you know, a human or an animal on this planet. And in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that's the place I want you to be as one of my students, but that's the place I want to be as a student. It's because that's when you start developing your game. Your body starts to know what to do before your mind knows what to do. And which is weird because when we first start Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, first it's like you're overwhelmed, right? You don't think about anything, you just freak out. Then you get to a state where it's like, okay, I'm asking you to get your brain involved, right? I'm asking you back, okay, when you're in this position, remember to frame on the neck, remember to do this, remember to do that. But once you get past those basic and those rudimentary levels, you know what I mean, those elementary skills, then it goes back to getting rid of the mind. Like, I was thinking here to do this or do that. It's like, no, your body should know instinctually what to do. And this is a reoccurring theme in like martial arts movies, right? And martial art influencers, or I guess characters or personalities, right? So like Bruce Lee, I would say is like a martial art personality, right? And he's always telling you to empty your mind, right? Be like water. Water can be smooth or it can crash. Water can take any shape that it pours into, you know? So meaning that whatever your opponent is doing, if your opponent is trying to be pressure, if your opponent's trying to be, you know, like a leg lock or whatever, like you can flow and be comfortable anywhere you are and crash when you need to. In the movie The Last Samurai is one of like our favorite quotes, but he's what's his name? Tom Cruise is trying to figure out how to beat this guy, you know what I mean, with their wooden swords when they're sparring. And finally this guy comes up to him and he says, too many minds. Too many minds. Meaning like you're thinking too much about it. Just let it be. And then you can kind of see a scene in there where he feels everything, right? He hits that flow state and he wins against like a seasoned samurai. And that's where I would say being a martial artist in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu starts to increase a lot. So when you hit that flow state in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is you've cleared your mind, you've emptied your mind, and you're just flowing. And musicians know exactly what I'm talking about, because like they get in a flow state when they're jamming or they're freestyling, or you know what I mean, they're playing and they're just feeling the beat. There's this guy in Taoism where he hit a flow state when he was as a butcher, and he would like cut this meat and he would do it in such a perfect way, and like kings and princes were asking him like, how do you do that? And he talks about being in a flow state, like just cutting meat. So I named the gym Flow State Jiu-Jitsu because I think that's the epitome, the pinnacle, the apex of what being a martial artist is, right? Is being able to hit a flow state while being in the most violent situation you can be in.
Have you
right?
heard of Ultra Instinct from Dragon Ball Z? Oh, okay. Well, I can talk about this real quick. It's basically, it's like, you know, well, you're familiar with anime, Japanese animation, a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
They anime, in my opinion, they like to exaggerate on real life concepts. So they take like an actual real life concept and really, really exaggerate to another level. So flow state, or being in that flow mind, is like Ultra Instinct is the ultimate level of flow state, if you will. So when Goku, who's the main character of Dragon Ball, he transforms into Ultra Instinct, and he's able to essentially, without thinking, dodge attacks. Like his body just like if someone throws a punch, he just naturally just it's like he just moves out the way and you can't touch him. But at the same time, he has the the offensive power as well. So his defensive flow is at its peak, but at the same time, his offensive flow is as well. So if he punches you, you just are destroyed. He can just beat you with one punch, essentially. So yeah, I wanted to touch on some more on that. Do we want to be in a constant state of flow? 'Cause I think you told me last night that animals are in a constant state of flow, but that means that they're always in the present and they can't concept the past or think too far in the future, or at least think about it like we do. So is it good for humans to be in a constant state of flow, or do we kind of need to tap in and tap out of that? Does that make sense?
I would say tap in and tap out. Yeah, and like I was talking about these, any most the influential, I would say, like Buddhism, Hinduism, Stoicism, Taoism, a lot of the isms. Like one of the reoccurring themes is like being in the present in the moment, right? And not to be dwelling on the past and not to be anxious about the future. And that's one of the beautiful things about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is you have no option but to be present in the moment, or else you're going to get choked to death. You know what I mean? So when you're doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's beautiful to be forced into the state of flow. You know, it's beautiful to be like conjured in there. You know what I mean? But as human beings, it's very important to learn from the past and to plan for the future. And I would say that our emotions of life are like a river, and a lot of people are in the river getting washed downstream by the river. You know what I mean? They're getting flooded and caught in their emotions. And we need to find a balance of being outside of the river and observing our emotions, and going into the river and feeling those emotions and knowing when to get out, when, you know what I mean, you're getting carried away, when you're getting washed away. And as is life, right? Like when we go, like when I bring my kids to like creeks and stuff to go play, it's like I know where they're safe, and I know when they need to get out and dry off, and you know what I mean? It's a very important and powerful lesson to know how to navigate the emotional self that is the human body, right? And the human emotions. So I would say that here, I'm going to give another example. Why do we drink alcohol? And one of the reasons we drink alcohol is because we know what it is to be sober. You know what I mean? Being sober is the reason that you would drink alcohol, but when you never always want to be drunk. You know what I mean? Like you want to go back to being in a state of sobriety. And so being sober is what makes being drunk fun, you know, and different. But we also can all agree that it's not a good idea to be drunk all the time, right? So I would say in that same sense where it's like, know when it applies, know when it's healthy, know when it's a good release, know all these things, and know when to get out and know when to be sober. I would say tapping in and out and knowing when to, knowing when to look to the past without getting caught up in the past, know when to look to the future without getting caught up of what could be, you know what I mean? And then, if you're constantly in a state of flow and like always in the present, like how well can you really plan for the future and things like that? And I wouldn't say I'm any expert on this scenario, but this is kind of something I've extracted from some of the thought leaders of the world in the past who I look up to. So I would say flowing in and out of flow state, there we go, is probably the best thing. Having the past, the present, the future, martial art, flow, having all these things be tool belts in your, are tools in your tool belt, and know when to use those tools and what scenario those tools are best used for.
Man, great stuff, bro. I have to do. You said Taoism is where the concept came from.
Taoism, T-A-O or D-A-O,
oh, gotcha,
and then
gotcha,
ism.
gotcha. I'm gonna have to do more research on that. Thank you, man, for spending your time with me this morning. giving all this feedback and knowledge of everything that you been through, and going into detail on every single question. My last question for you, though, is do you have a question for me before we leave today?
How has your experience been coming into our gym? So I know that DC Fighters was your first and only gym that you've really been dedicated to. And so now you're coming into a brand new Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu environment and seeing how we coach the environment we do. And it's different, right? And everybody kind of runs their community a little different. What are the positives and negatives that you've seen from our gym? And like your takeaway from your experience at a new and a different gym.
So I'll tell the whole story. I started with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with the Gracies. There was a Gracie gym that was next to ours back at the mall. And I started with them but they don't do too much competition. It's just self-defense mainly. And I wanted to really compete, I think. Well, not really compete. Actually, I wanted to roll, but they don't let their white belts roll until they get like 2 stripes or something like that. And I wasn't trying to wait on that. So I left them and I went to an MMA gym. After I went to the MMA gym, COVID happened. That gym shuts down for a while. I leave that gym and then I find DC Fighters. So and to answer your question, I loved being at the smaller gym at the mall because the one-on-one attention that I got. I felt like almost every class was like a private lesson because we only would have max 6, 7 people at a time. Going to your gym now is obviously way more than that. You know, we can have 20 people or even more in the class. So it takes away, I guess, that one-on-one attention. But me being a blue belt, you know, I know what I don't know now. So even with the bigger classes, I can still keep a mental note like, okay, I know I don't know this, so I can go work on that. Versus if you're a brand new person coming into a gym with 30 people in the class and you somehow get paired up with another white belt, I feel like, I could be wrong, I feel like that can kind of hinder your growth in a way, you know what I mean? Versus with me at the old gym, I'm rolling with higher belts all the time, and I'm getting one-on-one attention. I really felt like that helped my game. So I guess if there's one negative about joining your gym, it's the classes are big, and I'm not getting that much attention. And I'm not trying to make it.
Right.
If that's a negative, I'm not saying that's a bad thing or nothing like that. But you know, I do miss the one-on-one lessons. You know, because you can't stay. Right.
No,
you can't stay with me the whole time and walk me through this technique. You have to say, do this, and then you have to go on to the next person, which is, you know, fine. But if the old gym, if they could stay and actually stay with you the whole lesson and break it down to you. The positive, though, go ahead.
It's, I was going to say, to add to that, I get it, because, like, when I first started in my first year, I was with a black belt, basically, and I was the only one who showed up to the morning class for most of the time. So it was like privates all the time. What I would say is there's advantages and disadvantages, right? Like to more people. One is more people, more bodies to roll with, which is very, very important. But instruction-wise, it's that's the disadvantage, right? Is instruction-wise is like you don't get as much individual attention. And that should be a rule, in my opinion, is like higher belts should partner with lower belts to do the move, because then they're being forced to teach, which is very good. And then the lower belt is getting an experienced person to walk them through it. You know what I mean? So maybe that's something I should implement more at the gym. So I'm glad you said that. But that's a give and take. More people I love because there's more bodies to roll with, more, you know what I mean, more experience that you're going to get. But that not as much individual attention. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
But
I
really hope you do implement that. I think that will help everyone to make sure, at least as much as possible, that a higher rank is with a lower rank. Because, you know, when you got 2 white belts together, what are they really going to learn from each other?
What are they doing to each other?
So I think that would be great to implement going forward. But my positive was really what you just said. Being able to roll and fight different people. You know what I mean? If I have more options now, I could go against a bigger guy with less skills. I can go against a smaller guy like you with way more skills. You know what I mean? And I could just pick which type of person I want today. You know what I mean? I can go against a really, really smaller guy with less skills or a really, really bigger guy with more skills. So I have more options, and I can I can fight different people. And I think overall it's going to help. Long term, definitely, it's going to help me be a better at jiu-jitsu. So that's the main thing I like about it. And just meeting new people in general. You know what I mean? Meeting you, your wife, Joe, and all these guys. I rolled a 30-minute match with one of the Joes, man. Say that again?
John Mayo.
John Mayo. Yeah,
John Mayo.
I rolled 30 minutes with him. I never done that before ever, and it was just so brutal. But I'm so happy that he even invited me to do that. No one at DC invited me to do that. I don't think we really wanted to do that, but no one there did that. But he was just like, "Yeah, man, let's just roll 30 minutes." And I was just like, But it was great, man. And I think doing that helps you kind of get into that flow state as well, because you're so exhausted. It's just like, you can't use any strength. You just have to use strictly jiu-jitsu or what you know. So that was great doing that. And
exactly.
But yeah, man, the best thing about it is just meeting new people, discussing new ideas, and yeah, man, like I'm really happy about. I was hurt about the move at first, but I'm happy to be with you guys, man. Like I really am. And I can't wait to grow the gym more, you know what I mean? And just continue to learn from you guys,
man. Absolutely, yeah. How is the coaching environment different as well? Like for example, like the warm-ups that I do are probably like unique to our gym, or the coaching style of like the way I bring us through a flow. You know what I mean? Like how do you compare and contrast those different
starting
styles?
with the warm-ups, I think, to be honest, I think our warm-ups were a little more, you use more jiu-jitsu as warm-ups, I guess. Like, we're going to warm up doing jiu-jitsu drills, which I think is fine. At DC, we did, like, static stretching. Like, we actually, like, stretch in a, I guess you could say, a more organized way, so to speak. But I like we're warming up doing jiu-jitsu, too. We're doing jiu-jitsu, and we get more, I guess, reps warming up doing jiu-jitsu. So it makes sense. I guess maybe we should do a little both. You know what I mean? Introduce some static stretching, and then to get our heart rates up, maybe do some jiu-jitsu type single leg. What's that single leg warm up that we did last time? That's a great. I love doing it.
Yeah.
I love that. But yeah, man, and the coaching style. I don't think you and Alec really coach that much different, in my opinion. I think you guys are kind of the same when it comes to coaching. I like how you piggyback off of Alec's instructions. You know, when someone has a question, you would say, but to add to that, just to give it more depth. So I think when both of you are coaching together, it complements each other when both of you guys are coaching at the same time. And I don't think there's any conflict with the coaching styles. I like the fact, though, when I first came there, that you have us doing the drills, like the fast-paced drilling, when we're what did you teach us the other day when a guy is when we're in open guard and you shift their legs over to the side, but you use your bottom leg to kind of like it's not like a knee on belly or anything, but you basically go back and forth. I can't remember the concept of it.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. But yeah, you like do the fast-paced drilling where it's like it's not about how good you do it. It's like do this as many times as you can.
That stuff I think will help me, because we didn't do too much of that at DC. We didn't do too much of that. So that was new. And yeah, man, there's not too many negatives. Well, other than that, it's a further drive than the mall. You know, the mall is right around the corner, but the drive. But other than that, man, I love it, man. I'm just thankful that I have a place to train, you know, and I'm learning from smart, intelligent people, man, every day. So it's beautiful, man. It's really beautiful.
You are a very, very, very good addition to the gym. Love having you. I love rolling with you. I always say, because you're always smiling, but then when we're done rolling, you're not smiling.
I just get in my feelings, man. I'm really competitive. I don't like to lose. Even at practice, I don't really like to lose. And I have to work on that. Like you said earlier in the show, if you're fighting to win, you're not really fighting to learn. You know what I mean? So it's okay to get tapped at practice and whatever. But sometimes my ego just gets in the way. I'm just like, man, you know what I mean? Because I want to win. I want to win regardless. Competition, practice, whatever, I want to win. But that's not always the best approach.
Yeah.
You understand? So, yeah.
Yeah. Always have a very specific goal with your rolls. Like, if my goal is to get a bunch of taps in, you know what I mean? Then it's going to be very, very miserable for the person I'm rolling with. You know what I mean? Like, if they're a lower belt. If my goal is, like, control time, and not allowing my opponent to move, then you're going to feel a different thing. You know what I mean? If my goal is completely flow state, you know what I mean? Then you know what I mean? Like, accomplishing those kinds of goals in your roles is very important to have, like, something different, you know? A lot of the time is like, I'll spend my first couple minutes or my first few rolls losing. Like, you know, I'll start off in side control or start off in mount. And as you get better at jiu-jitsu, I think that's very, very important for you to do and start in your game, because the better you get, the less likely that you're going to lose position, and then you're going to get into a competition and you're going to be in a bad position. You're like, crap, when was the last time I was in a bad position?
Man, that's so true. So that's really, really true. I remember rolling with your wife, man. We rolled one time, and I meant to talk to her about this, but she's probably going to hear this. But we rolled like one time, and I ain't gonna say I wasn't trying to beat her up or nothing, but, you know, when I got an opportunity to get a tap or something, I went for it, you know what I mean? But I wasn't trying to, like, smash her or anything like that. But she never approached me to roll again after that. So I was like, man, I hope she ain't, you know, take it all, you know, personal. Yeah.
No, she's tough. She's tough.
But
yeah,
man. Yeah, man.
You know what I mean? She's not trying to build a career with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You know what I mean? Like, for me, I'm trying to build the career. Like, I'm going to go hard. Like, you tap me, oh man, I'm going to get you back. You know, like, it's a little bit different for her. It's like she's in it for the long haul, for, like, self-defense and exercise and things like that. So, she's complimented you on your rolls. She likes your rolls. So.
That's good, man. God bless her, man. But Chad, man, thank you, bro, for your time today, man, and all the content that you provided. This is going to be
absolutely.
This is one of the best episodes I've done, and I appreciate you, bro. Before we go, do you shout out your Instagram, website, gym, or any type of contact that if someone wants to get in contact with?
Absolutely. So, check me out on Instagram, which, if you're here, like, you just go to I'm Chad Myers.Ju.Jitsu, and I'm Chad the Dad. I'm competing frequently. I'm sponsored by X Martial. So Chad the Dad with no spaces is my coupon code. So if you want to get some cool X Martial gear, you probably see me competing with leopard print. You see me competing with donuts and all sorts of silly rash guards. I really like X Martial. They're good people there. So go check out X Martial. They're one of my favorite sponsors. And Flow State Jiu-Jitsu is my brand and my online brand. We are, we're becoming a DC affiliate, so our school is going to become DC Fighters, but I'm going to keep the Flow State brand as my online brand. I'm going to be trying to build more content online. And my website is flowstatejj.com. So go check me out there. And I'm going to be starting my YouTube channel here in the new year. So I'm going to start building a lot of content. I'm actually stealing, I'm going to be stealing your platform, kind of. Not your platform, but your structure of how you make your videos, and that's why I've been recording my videos, is because I want to put, like, some roles out there with some background talking and things like that. So when I saw that you were doing that, I was like, cool, man, looks good.
It's cool, bro. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the like button, subscribe, comment below, holler at Chad, man. Chad, thank you, man. I hope you have a great rest of your day, man. I'll see you tomorrow at the gym. I
Okay.
appreciate you, man. Have a good
Sounds
day, man.
good.